Hey guys, welcome back here to Intuitive Angling, and appreciate you guys swinging by the channel and hanging with me for a little bit. Guys, today we have one of those info pack videos that's definitely going to help you catch a lot more fish if you utilize it into your approach. And we're going to talk about why you should never fish into the wind when you're bass fishing. This is a common mistake that I see lots of anglers make. Even good anglers make this mistake. And what I want to do in today's episode is I want to break down exactly why fishing into the wind is going to cost you fish. And there's really only one situation that you should ever fish into the wind. That's a very, very, small percentage of the time. But overall, fishing with the wind is going to add up to a lot more fish. And I'm going to explain to you exactly how to do it, talk about different type of wind speeds and that type of thing. But one of the things about bass fishing that gets overlooked a lot is the fact that your casting angle and your boat positioning it has such a critical role in catching bass. I mean, the combination of those two things, being in the right position with your boat and your casting angle, it makes the difference between catching 1 or 2 fish and catching 30 fish. And it just doesn't get talked about enough. So we're going to dig into that in today's video here. Also, guys, real quick, couple different things here. Quick reminder, I've been talking about it. I just want to give everybody a heads up that I'm going to start a live stream on Intuitive Angling. We're going to do probably a weekly live stream. This is going to be a private live stream for channel members and Patreon members. So if you're interested in being part of that live stream and interacting with me, and we're going to cover topics that you don't hear on the regular channel, maybe some edgy stuff and info pack stuff, just go to my YouTube homepage. You'll see a little join button. Click that for info to be a channel member, or go to my description in the video and sign up to be an Intuitive Angling Patreon member. And those Patreon members and the channel members will be you'll be able to link into that private live stream. And also, guys, finally, this time of year, one of the top lures that you'll ever use is a finesse jig, especially when that water temperature starts to hit about 50 degrees. Here's my Blaukat Power Finesse Throwback jig from Cumberland Pro Lures, living rubber frog hair skirt. I'll have this in my Tackle Warehouse link in the description if you guys would like to pick up a few. We got 6 different colors and 3 sizes, so appreciate putting up the plugs there, guys. Okay, now this, like I said, guys, I see this all the time, and I've noticed it for years and years and years, is I see dudes fighting the wind all the time. They got their nose of the boat pointed into the wind. Sometimes they're, the boat slapping and just throwing up water on them in the boat, and they're casting and their baits aren't going very far. Guys, just stop doing that. And here's why you do not want to do that, except for one situation. When you're fishing into the wind, you are 10 times noisier to the fish, because if you fish into the wind, depending upon the intensity of that wind, you got your trolling motor going most all the time, especially if that wind's blowing over 10 miles an hour. You have that constant prop whirl. Never underestimate how bass are aware of noise, especially big ones. It's like you are never going to catch many big fish if you're noisy. And part of that noise is created by the trolling motor. So if you go with the wind, you're going to be a lot more stealthy. And guys, I don't care how hard the wind's blowing. Here's one of the first things I do, and this is a good tip for you guys to institute and follow. When you get ready to fish a bank, let's say you pull up to a rocky bank or a riprap bank or a grass line or a row of docks or whatever, I don't care if the wind's blowing 2 miles an hour and has a barely little ripple on the water, or if it's blowing 20 miles an hour. Look at the direction of that wind and go upwind of that bank and drift with the wind. That is the key, because number one, you're going to be quiet. You're going to drift up on those areas. The only time that you have to use the trolling motor is maybe to nudge that direction of the boat and let the wind blow you down there. And if you think you're going too fast, and you say, for example, the wind's blowing hard and you think, man, I really blew down that bank too fast, crank up and go back down and make another pass down it. Never turn that boat into that wind and fight that wind up the bank there. You're not going to catch as many fish, because on top of being noisy, your casting distance, again, based upon the wind direction and speed, your casting distance is going to be drastically cut in half. So if the wind's blowing 15 or 20 miles an hour, you're going to be able to cast half. Your casts aren't even going to be half as long as what you can cast if you're casting with the wind. And depending upon your technique and the bait you're using, casting distance can be super critical, and you're simply not going to catch as many fish because your bait is not in that sweet spot strike zone as long by a shorter cast. Another thing is when you cast your bait into the wind, it doesn't lay right in the water. The wind tends to catch it and it doesn't fall naturally. The presentation is not near as realistic and natural. And if you're going with the wind, number one, you can make a longer cast, you can stay farther away from the fish, you're more quiet, you can get your bait deeper, and when you cast with the wind, the fall of that bait is a lot more natural than casting, when you're trying to cast with that wind. There's every advantage to it whatsoever. Now, occasionally, you can even reverse your trolling motor. If you're going down a bank and you get good at it, you can reverse a little bit, slow yourself up on a sweet spot, but you're still not on that trolling motor near as much. Okay, now here's the only time that you really need to fish into the wind. Let's say, for example, you have one spot you're throwing at that's big as, say you got a spot that's as big as the front deck of your boat. Maybe you got a little drop off or something. There's some fish hanging on a drop off, or you've got a brush pile and 10 or 15 foot of water on the end of the point where you're throwing to that one brush pile. Yeah, in a situation like that, you have to fish into the wind if it's really windy, because you're only going to get a couple casts on it if you try to blow over it and you're completely out of position. If you have to cast to a ledge or a drop off or one particular spot, that is the only time you should fish into the wind. But when you're just fishing down a bank, never ever fish into the wind, guys. I'm telling you right now, your catch rate is going to go through the roof compared to what it was when you're trying to fight that wind. And this is something, guys, I'm just not saying this to be saying it. I've experimented with this a long time. And one of the first things that I noticed is when I first started fishing professionally, like on the Bassmaster Invitationals back in the 80s and 90s, that type of stuff, there was a ton of people that fished into the wind because they had this misconception that bass face into the wind or face into the current. That's why they did it. It's like, I remember fishing with several guys that said, I'm sitting here saying, why are we fighting this wind, down this bank? Why don't we turn around the other direction? And they'd say, well, that's because the bass are facing into the wind or the current. Guys, that's not true. Bass are not victims of wind like that. I have seen them. It's like, I don't care if the wind's blowing 15 or 20 or 30 miles an hour, they are not going to face into the wind all the time. They're all over the place down there. So that is a big myth and a misconception. And I tried it for a little bit because simply I saw a lot of fishermen doing it and it just did not work. And once I started fishing with the wind, my catch rates went so far, up. And like I said, the main thing that you can do with it is just, if you think you're going too fast down an area, there's a couple different things. You can put out a drift sock behind your boat to slow it down. But what I usually do is I just crank up and make other pass. Let's say, for example, the wind's blowing hard, like 20 miles an hour, and I'm catching my fish on a crankbait on a riprap bank, but I'm blowing down this thing pretty fast. I just let the wind blow me down it and crank up and start again, and over and over and over. And I can promise you'll catch more fish than getting there and trying to fight that wind and having a cast go 30 foot instead of 70 foot. So anyway, guys, get past that, man. If you're one of those people that fish into the wind all the time, change your tactics. You're not helping yourself by doing that. And just give it a try for about a year, see what you think about it. And I can promise you, you're gonna be getting a lot more fish in the boat. So we'll talk later, guys.